Thank you everyone for joining us today for Felton Institute.
Hello, everyone.
So now I do want to start with questions related to mental health. We are both social workers, and so we went to our programs together, and so excited to be able to speak with you, Raven.
Yes.
So are you ready for our first question? What is one thing that you would like to tell young people who are currently struggling with mental health issues?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Sure. What's one thing that you would love to tell young people who are currently struggling with mental health issues?
Oh, yes. If you're struggling with mental health, it is something that's common. Don't feel like you're alone, that you're stuck by yourself. Please, reach out for help. There's so many resources out there. I'm sure you can find the best fit for your situation, and just know that you're not alone. Whether it's depression, trying to figure out why you feel this way, just know that there are people who are struggling with the same thing. And so if you do feel that way, please find someone you can trust, someone who's going to be your advocate. And, there are resources out there that will best fit your situation.
I definitely agree with that. Know that you are not alone. And I remember someone in school who, find someone in school who you can talk to, whether it be a teacher, a friend, a counselor. I remember going through that and having help for myself. And so what's one thing that mental health means to you?
One thing. Let me think about that. It just really means taking care of yourself, taking care of yourself physically, making sure, your diet is good, you're physically taking care of yourself by exercising, but we really lack on paying attention to our mental health. So make sure that we're resting. That is one thing that I feel like really helped me. I am a person who overworks myself a lot. I say yes to everything. And then eventually I will crash and I will be in a depressive episode. So I have to remind myself to breathe. So yeah, take it slow. Know that mental health is definitely something that many of us, can get stuck in. We won't grow. We don't pay attention to it. So please go outside, get some sun, be outside, and, just remember that it all affects your mental health. So really just pay attention to yourself mentally, physically, nourish your mind.
Oh, I totally agree. I am a plant person, so that really helps me take care of myself.
Yes. I mean, right now I have, fake plants because I do not know how to take care of them. I am working on it.
So as someone who is an advocate for the deaf community, what taboos do you wish to remove regarding mental health? You're an advocate. What taboos do you wish weren't there? Oftentimes I'm a deaf Latina, so we think of mental health issues, and oftentimes we're like, oh, I'm not going to go seek help. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to put up with it. I'm going to deal with it and suffer through. You, as a Black deaf woman, what do you think about that? How do you advocate for mental health?
Honestly, it's, there's a lot of taboo topics that are related to mental health. I grew up in a Black family, so you don't see a therapist. If you see a therapist, you're labeled as crazy. There's just a lot of negative connotations when it comes to that. So there's no support, but you do need it. Sometimes you need that neutral person that's outside of your community to help you. They can see things that you can't, so it's important to seek out that neutral party to figure out what's going on, put a name on what's going on, which can lead to, seeking out the issue and figuring out, what to do, because it can be dangerous if you avoid it, so please seek out, the help you need. I mean, that's why I definitely advocate, as my experience with a social worker, mentoring the youth, it's important to emphasize that there's nothing wrong with you. This is normal. Sometimes it's just a normal feeling as being a human, just letting them know, like, yes, this is different, but we have to get control of our emotions. Sometimes they cry, or just, you need some type of release. Don't hold everything in. It's very important, not to hold everything in, have that release, because it's a big issue.
Yeah, one thing I've always felt is the worst thing that you can do is suffer in silence. So just like you're saying, you're not alone. There is always someone else who's available to listen and be there for you. And moving on to the next question. As a deaf Black woman working in the social work field, and I know you've worked with Dawn previously in Washington, D.C., what are some misconceptions in the deaf community related to mental health?
One thing that I feel is a barrier with mental health, with deaf people specifically, is just access to language, or just information, as far as hearing people, they have information available to them. So, they have resources. So for deaf individuals, we don't. It's hard for us to find resources. The deaf community is very small. Maybe we want to go to a specific place to find help, but we don't know them. Or, as far as like the hearing world, they can, go anywhere, find someone to help them. But for us, it's harder. It's a big struggle for us to find, what we need. Then you add the interpreter layer to it. I would love it to just be me and the therapist, and, but sometimes we're not comfortable, with the third party involved. And there's just a lot of layers to it, and, other issues that do affect, your mental health. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen pretty common is just the, language deprivation, as far as not finding accommodations, just comparing it to hearing people. It's just harder for us to find resources and, find organizations. Maybe we do find it and it's not the best for us because they don't understand deaf culture. So just, a lot of layers to it, with mental health issues for us as deaf people.
I agree with that as well. And as a social work major during my internship, everything was so spread out. And so being able to access where a deaf person can go and access the services they need, that's super important. And so I feel very fortunate that even though it was a hearing-based agency, my division was fully deaf. So this deaf services had deaf clients and deaf social workers, but that's an exception to the rule. Many places where you go, it's just completely inaccessible to get mental health services.
Yes. Example, I've worked outside of DC, and I know that in like the DMV area, outside of Virginia and stuff. So like, for example, they do have deaf run agencies, and they do provide services, which means, it's important to collaborate, network, but, in comparison to all the hearing agencies, we do struggle with that. If there's a deaf person, most times they will go to a hearing agency. So we try to get them to, refer them to us, somewhere where it is deaf centered and, deaf owns and run. But if you don't have that, that specific service, then, it's like, where can you find it? Where can you find an organization that is partnered or collaborates with a deaf-owned agency? It's the same with, immigration situations and citizenships, like all of that. We want to provide support and, help them with their paperwork and, teaching sign and helping them get language. And, it's just, it was very immigration based. Have a situation that happens to a client, if they have, different issues that need to be resolved, maybe you can resolve one thing. And then if you can't, refer them to a different, maybe a hearing based agency that does have services that may be best fit for that client. Typically, sometimes they'll come back to us because they are deaf, but we want them to continue having their services, because sometimes Dawn doesn't have it. So sometimes with hearing based agencies, with just our different cultures and communication, it's just, they don't really have all the resources that we would need, which adds that extra layer to our mental health struggles as deaf people. All the different referrals and going to different organizations and agencies, you go there and then they refer you out. Just, it happens so often, just hearing that same story over and over, you're going to forget about it. You're just not going to go through all that. You're eventually just going to stop because it's just going to cause more stress at the end of the day.
Oh, I totally agree. And you hear that story again. And so you end up reliving that trauma over and over. And it's not fair to the deaf client, and the person who's working with them to face those frustrations. And you want to provide the services, but there are so many barriers that still exist, right? So I definitely feel like it's important for us to advocate for change. So all over the United States, not just with different areas, but all over, your agency should have interpreters that are there. My deaf run agency, why should we have to provide interpreters for you? You as a hearing agency should be able to provide access for that deaf individual. Hearing people are not the only people that have mental health struggles. Deaf people struggle as well. There's such a variety that's lying therein. So another question that I wanted to ask you, as we talk about the importance of deaf representation in media, how important is that?
Everyone needs representation, right? Everyone, they want to see themselves, in media. They want to feel like, I can do this, I can do that. You want to see yourself in those situations. So there's just so many misconceptions about deaf people. Really from history, from way back, there's just been misconceptions about deaf people. And I think now hearing people are finally starting to realize, like, I think maybe in 2020, when we were forced to stay home, there were many deaf creators, content creators, and, on social media. And during that time, I felt, maybe people's eyes are opening up. Maybe people, like, just a little bit, but everyone really, wants to see representation, especially with, disabilities and being deaf. And, when I was on the Circle, reality TV, so people saw me. But I mean, that's one, example. We need more, don't get me started on, Black deaf, and I can go on and on, but in our, oppressions and stuff. But I just really feel like there's a misconception, just, and there needs to be change for, hearing people on how they view deaf people. I mean, they don't interact with deaf people, so then they're just going to continue being stuck in their ignorance because they haven't, seen anything different. So social media, being on television, I think that really does help people recognize and see deaf, and see them in a different way, even if they don't know anybody that's deaf, but they can still see deaf people in a different way. Just different kind of representations and helping with their perspectives of us and deaf people in media. It'll just, not just focusing on our struggles or the way, we speak, or, just not everything will be, oh, that person needs an interpreter, because people don't know even how to get interpreters. So, learning the role of an interpreter, sometimes deaf people don't even know what that's supposed to look like. So there's just many things that, people are ignorant about, and I'm really trying to help normalize things. And, especially Black deaf people, in a, just in this world where we're stuck, it's like, there's other things on top of it, that, it's just, that people can date, we can party, we can go to college, we have jobs. So, just all the struggles that we have at the end of the day go back to our mental health and our struggles being, deaf people, being people with disabilities, and trying to find accommodations. So, yes. So just all the struggles, but we shouldn't have to be nervous. We shouldn't have to, be nervous about finding accommodations, but everything else, including me, like even me, that's what I need to spend more time on with the media. And, I am working on that, especially with the Circle. I feel like that showed like deaf people can play games and in competitions, that, they see me, they see my interpreter, but they've never seen an interpreter on the screen. So, with, America's Next Top Model, we never saw their interpreter, off the screen or anything like that. So you saw Niall, but you didn't see his interpreter. So with me, I wanted to make sure that you got to see the interpreter as well.
I agree with that. Normalizing this is important. And I'd say 90% of deaf individuals are born to hearing families. And so that means 10% of deaf folks are born to deaf families. So our parents, our grandparents, and so on and so forth in our families, typically, overwhelmingly, we are the only deaf person that these people have ever met in their lives. And so there's a struggle for a learning curve for our families to figure out, how do we teach, how do we interact, how do we communicate? And so having deaf folks represented in media more and more often, like you say, that normalizes it. Like, oh, they were born deaf? Okay, yeah, that's cool. So they can't hear. They're the same as me.
Also with media, example, like a doctor's office or in the school system, there's still many things that we need to just progress on. We're so behind. People don't really understand that, 10% of deaf people are born into hearing families. Like, a lot of people don't realize that, deaf people are happy to have deaf children. Doctors ignore them, and then they tell, hearing parents who have deaf children, like, they're shocked. They want to give them resources. They want to give them cochlear implants and all these things. And so typically, the child may not want it, but of course the doctors are not advocating for the right things. They want to advocate for speech. They want to advocate for, speech therapy and cochlear implants and hearing aids. So as parents, of course, you like, oh, okay, sure. The doctor's telling me this. I'm going to take that information and run with it, or when the child is born and they didn't pass the hearing test, like, oh, unfortunately your child is deaf. So they've already, given that negative connotation, and it's understandable, but it's not the end of the world. So I feel like doctors should not be saying, oh, I'm sorry, or unfortunately your child is deaf, but have, more of a positive attitude and say, oh, your child is deaf, but we do have resources. We recommend you learning ASL, just all of these things that can just help change the narrative. maybe provide them with, deaf advocacy agencies or just something to start the process. Because I mean, 90% of parents have, deaf children, and they just get paranoid, they freak out, they don't know what to do. And so then they end up with a child who doesn't have language. They're, they don't know how to communicate because their parents don't know how to communicate with them, and, the parents don't know what to do. So again, that's adding that layer of mental health issues to that child who feels alone, feels isolated in this hearing world because they're not involved in conversations. They're really isolated. And some deaf people have never met another deaf person, so they feel alone and feel like something's wrong with me, So, advocating for that deaf child early.
Yeah, I remember in 2020, I was reading something that said everyone is staying at home and watching deaf people. We were very isolated from our hearing families. Our hearing families often don't learn to sign. And so access is very limited to us as deaf people. And so that helps exacerbate mental health issues. So it's already, communication is so important via ASL that
it's so ironic, how hearing parents, with a hearing child, they will quickly teach them ASL. They will, teach that child a language so quickly, but hearing parents to a deaf child won't. They immediately throw them into a speech class, or speech therapy, and not teach them ASL. Like, that is what you need to communicate with your child. It's so ironic, that the hearing parents are the ones, advocating for ASL and language, but then the hearing parents with deaf children are depriving them of language. I don't want to call it baby science. I want to, keep it at ASL, even though they're babies. Please stop saying that. I just wanted to get the word out for that.
Right, because ASL is American Sign Language.
Because when you're teaching them, yes, you're teaching it to a baby, but they will still use these signs when, you teach them the sign for milk. That is, adult deaf, sign milk. Everyone signs the same sign for milk. So, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there to stop saying baby science, amongst other things. But yes, there are resources there. A quick Google search and you will find the information that you're looking for.
Totally.
It's 2023 and we're still, stuck in having this conversation.
And we're still advocating for change. You're 100% right. But I was very fortunate because my family was exposed. They had a good doctor who had resources that included ASL. So if it wasn't for that particular doctor, where would my life have gone? What would that journey have looked like? So I'm definitely fortunate to have had that experience with my family.
My experience is interesting because I am part of the 10% that comes from a deaf family, fourth generation deaf. Okay, so let me take it back a little bit. Okay, so my great aunt, then my grandmother, then my dad, then me. So let me see, many cousins. But yes, my grandparents and then me. But really on my dad's side, yes, I have a deaf family. And on my mom's side, pretty much everyone is hearing, but I did grow up with my mom's side of the family. So even though I am part of that 10% that does have a deaf family, I was still exposed to my mother's side, which is the hearing family. So I did, do speech therapy when I was 4. I did get the hearing aids. You remember that FM system?
Oh yeah, I remember those things.
Yes. That was my, that was my journey. So later in life, when I was more exposed to my dad's side of the family, I did get to go to the deaf school and, immerse myself into that because of course they wanted to put me in a special education class, which nothing is wrong with special education, but for me, I didn't need special education. I didn't need to be in a special education class. So they put me there because the school system, didn't want me to learn, basically. They didn't want to teach a deaf child. It was just a lot of work and, it, wasn't easy for me. So, I couldn't be with my friends in mainstream school, a lot of bullying, just many things that, they did. It affected my mental health at the end of the day. Even though, I'm part of that 10%, I didn't really have the support. I was with the hearing side of my family. So I was struggling at school and, I couldn't be with my friends, and now I'm getting bullied. The classes that I was in, it was just the school system in general, of course it's hearing school system that I just feel like they should not be the ones making accommodations for, the deaf kids. They really just threw us in the school and then turned a blind eye. But I will say that later I did, when I went to the deaf school, I was in 8th grade to senior year. It was so much better. Such a, like, the best decision, for my social skills, for, just my identity. So it was just a lot better than the hearing school, for sure.
You really took off after that, I bet. I noticed that with my deaf friends and peers, we all share similar stories, but there are some differences. And so when I went to MSSD my senior year, I felt like my identity had been missing up until that point. Hearing people are great, but, and I agree with the special ed classes, same things, but it really impacts your mental health because as a deaf person, you're often very isolated. You're not going to these football games with the hearing people, or birthday parties that they're having. You're not invited to that. And so your mental health really suffers and is impacted. Like, wow, I'm really alone. I don't have any friends. I have, like a couple of deaf friends, but in school, like it's just a few here or there. So 100% agree.
And I know let me think. Was that my sister? My sister's. Oh, we went to school with another deaf student when I was in 8th grade. And it was.
So when you're a teen, finally.
Different world. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, interesting for sure.
So our next question, it's kind of already related to what we've been speaking on, but your experiences growing up as a deaf Black woman and your experiences in the past are what they are, but do you feel like things are the same, things haven't changed, that we're still trying to get caught up with the community?
Ooh. That is a good question. For me personally, my opinion, don't come for me, my opinion, I just feel like there's been not a lot of change. I say that because, okay, even though, yes, I was on TV, I am an advocate for deaf and for the deaf community, I still struggle in the real world. Many people see me on television and it's like, oh, okay, oh, I understand now the interpreter's role, or, something like that. Or like, oh, I'm the first, deaf person to play on a reality TV game show. Like, yeah, I had that experience. But then when I'm back in the real world, I'm still struggling, to get accommodations for anything, just to get, let me think, just, a doctor's appointment, to have an interpreter to show up for that. Many people are still ignorant to how that works, so I still feel like I take one step and then, you go 4 steps back, and I feel, oh, we've improved. And then something hits me where I get hit back into reality that we haven't. So I feel like for, deaf people and media, I feel like there's a few of us out here, but, and I do see more and more, I do see more and more, representation, but, in media, but not a lot. It's still, let me see, you still see, let me see, there was one person in that show. There was one person in one show, but then we never saw them again. And then they may provide an interpreter for this, and then you still may not get an interpreter for a different situation. So there's just these little situations, little instances where I am hit back into reality, to where I feel like I don't feel like there's been a big change. Even, getting jobs, and, they say, oh, this is an equal employer company. We advocate for diversity, but you still are not including those who are disabled and deaf. So where are we really, and most of the time, a lot of times they still do not want to provide an interpreter, or, they'll hire a staff interpreter. So of course it goes back to, oh, that's expensive and they don't want to pay for that, even though you provided, they just want to say they provide accommodations with your staff interpreter, but that's just a tax write-off. So you would think that a business would understand that, and they don't. So they're still complaining about, oh, we don't have it in our budget to provide interpreters. It always goes back to finances every time. So in those situations, in those instances, I do feel like, there's not a lot of change. We are still struggling to find jobs. It's just, I just feel like it's the same story that I've seen a few years ago. I mean, for me, many people think it's become easier for me, but no, I'm still a deaf person. I'm still struggling, to get interpreters for, a music festival or a concert. If it's, just me and a friend, I want to go to a concert. and I request an interpreter, I still get rejected. I show up and there's no interpreter. Like, what? How much do I have to scream, to get things done? Or people still have that misconception of, why are you going to a concert if you're deaf? Questions like that, we still get asked, questions that I used to get when I was little and growing up, I still get the same questions. So, I, so for me, I have not seen much change. And it's interesting because, now I use my platform. I have more hearing followers than I do deaf followers. And I don't get me wrong, I have a large deaf following, but with that platform, I still, I post videos related to, things that I struggle with, things with, hearing people, and people are literally arguing with me. Even though people are aware of ASL now, there's more, it's more recognized. I still get called out. So it's like, you still have, ASL people who are impersonating ASL interpreters. That's still happening, or people are signing songs because they know they're going to get paid, or they know their followers are going to increase. But anytime they see, a Black interpreter on the news, or, they always question their qualifications. They always question their skills. Or even, deaf interpreters, they call us frauds. So it's still, it just doesn't seem like we're moving in the right direction. I still see, I get it. People say baby steps. I understand. But how many baby steps are we going to get? Like, how many baby steps does it take? It's 2023. So we have been pioneering for so long, and just to even exist in this world. And we're still fighting this fight, and hearing people are still calling us hearing impaired. So, I've been deaf my whole life, and I'm just, I'm tired of hearing, oh, baby steps. We got to take, baby steps. Because from my experience, we're still not getting jobs. We're still not getting, access. We are trying to survive in this world, and I'm really fed up. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of people making excuses, trying to belittle our struggles, belittle what we're going through. Oh, it's just baby steps. We're going to get there. No, it's just an excuse. It's just an excuse. Like, come on, get with the program. Come on. Like, we have to accommodate in this here in world. When are we going to start getting accommodations? So it's just a lot. So yeah. So people who say baby steps, I understand it is going to take a while, but I mean, it's been over 100 years, so I mean, when are we going to get there?
And the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, has been out since the 90s.
Say that again?
Yeah, the ADA Act that was established in the 90s, Americans with Disabilities Act, over 30 years, right there. It's like, we need to, instead of taking one step forward, 2 steps back, we need to get with the program, and we need to see access provided. So yeah, that does really affect our mental health when we're struggling. We have to fight. We have to explain, I need accommodations, and now I have to explain to you why. Why do I have to do that?
You have the hearing people who, they have the authority over us to make excuses. Like, they're asking us, why do we need it? Or so I have to say, oh, I mean, I can't afford, like, why do I need to explain that? Like, even like for captioning for videos, like, they're like, oh, that takes too long. Oh, I'm busy. Again, with the excuses. I need this. It's not a choice for me. I need this. It is a necessity. And you just, it's not a want, it's a necessity. But you feel comfortable saying, oh, you need communication to survive, but that takes too much of my time. So I'm not going to do that. What?
But deaf people, when we go to caption our videos, we have to manually do that.
Hours.
An hour for one video. And hearing people, they just talk, and they can have the voiceover that automatically generates the captions, whereas we have to literally type it out. So make it make sense. So if we can accommodate y'all can accommodate us. It works both ways. Exactly.
It's just, I don't think people, okay, when it comes to, Black and white, as far as race, you have, it's just, there's always people who are the oppressors, who feels like hearing people, they don't want to see themselves as the oppressor. I get it, but at the end of the day, you are, and so to be an advocate or an ally, like, you really need to look at yourself and just really delve deep instead of making excuses. You know, like, oh, I'm so tired of seeing the comment, oh, they should teach ASL in school. I wish I would have learned ASL. You can start, do it. You know, it doesn't, like, you can do, it's not impossible. Go ahead and start. You still can learn. There's so many resources out there for you to learn, you know, ASL. So they use that as an excuse and never do it. They just use it as an excuse to not do it. And I'm so sick of hearing that. Oh, I wish I knew ASL to talk to you. Okay, I can give you resources. And then what do? You still don't do it. So I'm just so sick of it. Oh, people say, oh, I really want to learn. And then, you know, try to have a conversation with me. And then again, they start making excuses. And personally, it's just a big F you. Cause it just feels like a big F you, you know, like, you know, deafness is an invisible disability. And many people, they think about, you know, ADA, they think about a physical disability.
Yeah, people in wheelchairs and stuff.
Right. Oh, you know, we need an elevator, we need a ramp. You know, they think about that. They think about a physical disability. But, or even for blind people, make sure they have Braille. You know, they'll provide that for them. But for deaf people, we need communication, you know, because we have communication barriers. Or, let me see, people who, I mean, yes, we have communication barriers, but, you know, on top of other things. But again, we have communication barriers, and it's so tough to advocate for that kind of disability.
So you have to say, you know, oh, I'm applying for this job, or I'm hosting a workshop, you know, do you have to provide interpreters? And then they say, why?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, because I'm still deaf. And I use my voice sometimes, or sometimes they'll force me to SimCom, which is talking and signing at the same time.
And then that talking and signing, that's, you know, that's not a language. And, you know, we shouldn't even have to use our voices.
Right. We should have that choice, whether we want to or not.
It's just, mostly, you know, deaf people, we can't hear ourselves anyway. So it's just, I don't know. I'm just, it's like, I don't like to use I don't like to, but I do, because I'm accommodating hearing people. I do it for them. So that, you know, and it just becomes a habit, you know, and then, yes, hearing people will, if I speak, then it's like, oh, they'll pay attention to me. If I sign, no, they won't.
Yeah. I think it's been the same for me. I remember while I was growing up, and still even now, feeling like less about myself. And sometimes I'll even ask the interpreter, what do I sound like? Because I'm not sure what my voice sounds like. Do I sound good? Like, how do I sound? And you never know what other hearing people are thinking when they hear my voice as well. So that's a point of self-consciousness.
I mean, apparently I'm loud. I don't have a, you know, like an inner voice, an inside voice. Like, you know, people say, oh, use your inside voice. I don't know what that means. So I guess I have an outside voice, but I don't know how to whisper. Like, I don't know how to, you know, use an inside voice. I don't know how to do that. So it's like every time maybe I laugh or I speak, people look at me and people are like, shh, be quiet, be quiet. Well, I don't know how to do that. What do you want from me? You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to be quiet, you know, quote unquote quiet. I don't, you know, you know, so if you know, we have, you know, we're loud to get each other's attention. We're just loud people, you know, so, you know, people think we're deaf, so we're automatically quiet, but we're not.
Oh, I thought my light froze. Can you still see me?
I see you. Yes.
Okay, great. So, yeah, it's the same thing for me. So I know that, you know, my whole family is hearing, except for me. I'm the only one that's deaf. So when I'm closing doors or drawers, my mom's always like, oh my God, why are you slamming the door so loud? I'm like, oh, I thought it was, I didn't know it was loud. Oh, you know, I don't realize some things make noise even.
Right.
I
get the same thing.
Or like simple things, like I leave the water running in the sink accidentally.
Yes.
Because I can't hear it, so I forget it's running, and, you know, I forget to turn it off. So sometimes I'm really paranoid and I'm double and triple checking, like, okay, right, I did turn that off. Oh my God, okay, cool.
Yes, deaf problems.
Yes. So I'm on to my last question before we wrap up. How can we become better allies and advocates to the deaf community and to the Black community as well, and the Black deaf community?
Really, it starts with educating, you know, and really unpacking your flaws and just discrimination, prejudices, you know, what you were taught in the past does not always mean it's accurate now, or that it was ever accurate. So really just changing your way of thinking, and it starts with educating. Education is free. I mean, yes, you may have to pay a deaf person to teach you, but the information is there, and just really being willing to be open-minded and learn and really say, okay, I have this privilege. I need to learn how to use my privilege to be an ally, to advocate, not harm, and have that conversation, and finding social groups. You can learn so much from other cultures, from other people, but you have to get uncomfortable. That's okay. That is the start. You have to be uncomfortable. We don't mean to make you feel uncomfortable, but as people who experience oppression, we are comfortable. So you have to educate yourself and really ask the community what you can do and how you can provide support, because we do want to make sure you don't, overstep.
And you have to be ready to have those real hard conversations with your employees, with your kids, with whoever you confront in your life about being deaf. You have to be able to have those hard conversations, and not just to harm someone. That's not the intention. The intention is to work through that process and come out better on the other side.
And that's how change happens. You receive the information, you share it with others. You don't just keep it to yourself. You don't hoard the information. You just really have those conversations with other people. Watch videos with captions, add captions, make tutorials, just don't stay silent, and you have to accept the oppression that comes with it. If that's part of it, but definitely follow deaf creators. There's resources, deaf therapists, counselors, follow them and you'll learn.
I agree. Is there anything else that you'd like to add for our viewers while we still have a few minutes left?
I think that's it. Thank you everyone for joining us for this month, for Deaf Awareness Month. I just suggest, all 40 of you in this live to really just follow other deaf creators, find different resource centers, and really that's it. Just be uncomfortable and accept being uncomfortable, and you'll make a difference.
And we definitely can post some deaf creators and content creators, some instructors, some educators who can teach you and add on to our story. So if you would follow them, that would add to your learning.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Y'all are amazing. Bye.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much, Raven, for joining us. Bye.
Bye.